Hello and welcome to the AutoTalk Weekly Wrap. I am looking at myself in a camera and realizing, like many people heading back to work after a long summer gap, that I need a haircut and a shave. To my to my right is David Crawford, and below me is Graham McDonald. Someone just sent me a text and a little note, and something we'll follow up on probably for a news story coming to your websites soon. Is that we didn't meet the clean car standard last year with net penalties, which I think everyone was expecting, but everyone had to pay some money. But anyway, we'll get into more details on that once we've got the actual figures in front of us. How is everyone? I am hearing, I've just been on the call to phone someone else, and they were suggesting that a lot of the new car dealers are saying that EV inquiry is through the roof over the last week or two because of the fuel prices. You seeing people coming in maybe a little more worried about their petrol costs, Graham, when it comes to their used import purchase? No?
I was going to say quite the opposite. Everyone we've spoken to has said the last couple of weeks have been some of the quietest yet. And we always say, it couldn't get any quieter or, we're on the up from here. But it has been really noticeable. All our suppliers have come in and said, you guys seen any people? There's just been a lack of people, full stop. The last 2 weeks. Last week I thought, okay, that's just 4 or 5 days, but that's become a bit of a fortnight trend. We're not seeing the people to suggest that they might want an EV, let alone buy a car. It's been noticeably quiet. And that's not just the car industry, but all the peripheral industries that surround that. And maybe it's a West Auckland thing, though I do talk to guys in other areas as well.
No, I do think I'm with you on this. So one thing I would note is that I think a lot of you went back to work last week. The traffic was really bad. But in Auckland, certainly, it's actually gone quieter again traffic-wise this week. And that, I think, is, and I've got friends who went back to work and then they're now up at north at the beach kind of thing. So perhaps there's an element of that this year. Maybe the timing's working that way. We've got a couple of short weekends floating around the place, depending on where you are, et cetera, et cetera.
Yeah, well, it's Auckland Anniversary Weekend this weekend, isn't it?
Yeah, it is.
I was just going to say, I was reading an article where they quoted Amy from the MIA saying that they expect the recovery for EV sales now to be a 36-month recovery from last year. So we still got, they don't think it will bounce back this year like we thought it would. It's more likely going to be 2026. My immediate thought is, a brave call. She could well be right, but my experience going all the way back to my time at the Ministry of Transport, so 20 odd years ago, has been that every time the fuel price goes up, interest in fuel efficient vehicles goes up. So two things happen. People sort of travel less to save the money. Road safety outcomes improve because they travel more cautiously to try and save the fuel bill. And then certainly in the last decade, interest in hybrids, plug-in hybrids and EVs go up. So fuel prices may yet be the kicker to change that. But we'll see. If the fuel prices don't go up and up, then Amy could well be right. It could still be a slow recovery.
But you're also talking about, there's also been comments from certain sectors too that if the government wants EVs to sell, they need to support them. And perhaps saying that it's going to be a slower start helps in that argument as well. I mean, Amy's great, MIA is great, but it's also a lobby group. It does have a reason for saying some of the things it says, as you would know from your time, David.
Yes, but typically lobby groups are relatively careful about some of the things that they say. That they bring out. Certainly, I was of the habit of making comments when you wanted to put what you expect to be happening in the forefront of ministers' and officials' minds. So it's a let's remind them of what we think the market's going to do. Typically, we don't make things up, and I think Amy would have had some comments made to her by the distributors about what their expectations and market predictions are. And I think, the distributors, new vehicle distributors in New Zealand keep in touch with their franchise dealer network. And so they will know what the dealers are facing. They'll be doing their pre-orders, thinking about what might happen. How many vehicles do they want to land here? Because some of them, they have to pay for the vehicles before they come here. So it's a financial hit. Time will tell. Time will tell.
Yeah, yeah. I think the other thing with the electric vehicle market is could Elon, and I won't make the hand motions he does, his activities over the next
from
year or two
Earth to
begin to impact
Mars.
Tesla. And of course, Tesla is a massive attractant to the electric vehicle market.
Yeah. Yeah, his Earth to Mars salute was interesting, wasn't it?
There's a lot of interesting stuff going on there right now.
Okay,
Richard, can I just...
here's my take on that. He did not go out there to do a Nazi salute. He's a bit
No.
autistic. He was awkward, and he did something he probably realized afterwards in a moment of passion that looked a bit silly. And he probably acknowledges that it does. But the way
was a bit
he
more like
doubles
dabbing.
down and then goes, oh, it's just all the media going at me for all this blah, blah, blah. It's like he should go, look, nah, sorry, yeah, it did look a bit like a Nazi salute. It's not what I meant. Sorry, guys, move on.
That's not his way. It's never been his way. But you're
I was
right.
just going to go back to the point that you made a second ago, Richard, that I wanted just to call you out on. And I always feel like I'm not an anti-EV guy. I'll sell anything. I don't care. I like cars. But the EV industry is no less, I suppose, interested in the message being projected as the MIA are in terms of messages being projected. You talk about the MIA being a lobby group at its essence and its core, and it's got certain agendas that it needs to project that is no different from the EV groups that also have a similar message to project. So there's gaslighting going on all sides of the industry, of which I have been part of from the used industry as well. But let's not exclude
which
any
message from
part
the
of
EV
the
industry
industry.
from the EV groups are you talking about here?
I do think that there's been and we're going to get into a rabbit hole here that we probably haven't got time for. And
hand over your receipts, Graham. Hand over the receipts.
Which ones?
No, back your comment.
Okay. I'm just going to pointing out that all the various groups that are interested in various sectors of the marketplace have a barrow to push. And whether it's the correct pathway or not, to an extent, they have an agenda. And sometimes I think we start talking about agendas as if they are the factual way forward, without analysing whether that is still a paid opinion to have on behalf of a lobby group, or whether it is based simply on everyday factual content. I'm involved in it in Australia. We were involved in it in IMVIA, MIA, Drive Electric, the EV titles that you're involved in, Richard, that we have a lot to do with. Everyone has, to an extent, has an agenda to push for various reasons. I don't think anyone's immune.
I didn't read, to be fair to Amy, I didn't read hers as an agenda. I read hers as saying, because MIA was saying last year they expected the EV market to come back this year. And they've done a little bit of a hard look at it and said, well, actually, we're not sure that it will. That's what I read into it. I don't see any lobbying there. I just see a group coming out and saying, well, on behalf of the industry, we still think that EV sales are likely to be slow and they're going to rebound, but they're going to take longer to rebound. It was a resetting of expectations. I didn't read any lobbying into it. Normally, the lobbying comes in when you make a statement like that and then you start asking for policy changes. She wasn't asking for policy changes. And that's the difference. Usually lobby groups via MIA, Drive Electric, they'll come out and they'll make a scene-setting statement, and then they'll attach a list of things that they think you should do to readdress that. I didn't see that this time. I just saw this as saying, hey, we think the market's going to take longer to get better again.
Yeah. I don't think it's necessary they're calling for that. I think one of the issues, and we've got a couple of quotes from Amy in the AutoTalk magazine that's coming out today, is that the government's kind of got this behind-the-scenes need to clean up the fleet to an extent. That clean car standard's still there. They're still working in that way. They've lessed it off a little bit, but, the intent is still there. but it's kind of like it's almost a hidden thing, and it's on the industry now to push these things forward. And I think to an extent what she's wanting the government to do is just acknowledge the clean car standard's there. We're still running it. The idea being as you guys get into cleaner cars, this isn't the industry forcing you into these things. The government needs to front foot it on this. Now, that doesn't necessarily mean front footing, here's some subsidies, here's some whatever. It could just mean the government going, this is why we're doing the clean car standard. It's a good thing. It's, not just the dealers can charge you more or charge you less.
Let me remind you what Simeon Brown's motive was, because he was really clear to me before I retired, and he did not change his tune all the way through his time as Minister of Transport. He was very clear that this is a marathon, not a race. You don't need the subsidies. What you need is a clean car standard that over time will bite, because it will start to readjust the inequities in terms of relative affordability by putting penalties on those cars that emit high CO2. We just don't need it in 24, 25 and 26, but we certainly need it as we head to 2030 to 2035. That was his strategy, was always to pace it. And I think that's what we will see. We will see this gradual penalties arising. So there will be some penalties from last year. I expect there will be some penalties from 2025, and that will affect the price of vehicles. And Graham, you know that really well. Mm-hmm. And it affects the used car sector differently. It's more immediate. It's longer term for the new vehicles. Be really interesting to see in terms of the new vehicles how they make their price differences, whether they load the high emitting vehicles or whether they try and spread it out all of their vehicles. I suspect the latter. Look, the clean car standard, it's going to start to bite. And the light commercial sector has had a couple of years grace, but it will start to bite from 2027 onwards as well.
I've noticed been thinking about this the last couple of days, which all this is actually relevant, is I think we're starting to see the first sign again of credit harvesting in the import sector. Last year, if you were careful about what you bought, or you weren't irrational about what you bought, you could more or less manage a balanced CCS account, unless all you sold were, high emitting, Val fires or things like that. But it's been really noticeable now that the compliance industry has gone back to work in the first 2 weeks of January, and now your accounts are being loaded up with the actual value, the CCS value of the stock you're importing. And I keep a really careful watch on this, down to the last gram and the last dollar. Everyone's in the same boat. It's the great leveler, and it suddenly becomes very apparent that there are very few vehicles that are going to gain you a credit. Very few, and the credits are small. And the majority of stock coming in is going to be CCS hungry. And the hunger may be a couple of $100 or it might be $1,000. I've got a vehicle we just landed and complied that was $3,000. It's $3,000 worth of CCS value. $3,000, okay? So over 100 grams of a popular vehicle. So suddenly it starts to have a real world bite. And also seeing no end of what I'd call low-end, low-value market credit harvesting vehicles still coming in droves at price values that I can't see how they work from a profit perspective. I mean, you can't buy this here and sell it there and take a profit. There's something missing out of the chain. You're either selling it at the zero profit margin or there's some other mechanism behind your movement. And I just wonder whether some importers are waking up and thinking to themselves, if we don't make a dime on the Aqua or the e-power note, it doesn't matter because it's now harvesting us the credits we need to take us forward into 25, which is the whole idea behind the scheme. But I think the import industry is waking up really quickly to the reality of what they may need to do. And 25 could be the first year we've seen of effectively nil profit importation to gain the CCS credits you need to import the stock that people actually want to buy outside of those top 2 or 3 sellers.
Mm-hmm. Yeah. Well, we will see. Read that story when it comes out today in the AutoTalk magazine. There's a little discussion there is around whether dealers need to be starting to pass on in their on costs, clean car standard costs, just to make people aware. Certainly a call there for more awareness by the public that this isn't just an industry thing that's going on, because people just don't understand. The clean car discount was well publicized. The clean car standard is not publicized. And if you're wanting to trigger consumer change, then they need to be part of the discussion, I think is essentially the point.
Well, you can't. You can't do it. One of the great failings of the system is that the current SIN card, it's almost as if we need to go to the American system of extrapolating out every line by line, every cost to bring a vehicle into its on-road charges. But on your SIN card, you've got no legal ability to itemize out the additional costs, like a CCS charge, for example, or your tire-wise levy, or your refrigerant levy, or any of the other levies and bits and pieces. You can't do it. You've got a single figure, and you can build, as dealers will be doing anyway. If you're bringing in a vehicle with $3,000 worth of CCS, there's more than likely at least part of that, and not all of that, you're loading into your price. But you can't display that to the public within your SIN notice. There's no way to do that. There's no legal mechanism to do that. Is there an argument to take back to government to say, well, if you really want us to get serious about giving the public an idea of the CCS value of the vehicle, allow it within the SIN notice itself, not just the label on the side.
There's nothing preventing you in law, Graham, to have a separate sheet on the car that says.
There is not. That's right. But the SIN card,
that's what they do in America, is they have an additional card.
Yep.
And I think some of the new vehicle dealers do that as well.
Yeah. Right, let's actually move on to some news that's on the website. And the first one is Bishop's take over transport portfolio. Chris Bishop is set to take over the key role of Transport Minister, with incumbent Simeon Brown heading off to tackle the troubled health system. Brown has made a significant impact in just over a year, dismantling the clean car discount, relaxing targets under the clean car standard, and announcing a number of new roading projects. He has not been stripped of the portfolio due to lack of performance, with Prime Minister Christopher Luxon stating he was an outstanding and diligent minister who'd done an excellent job. If we go down to Chris Bishop, he's been welcomed by the industry. Of course, he has been around for a number of years. He's held the Shadow portfolio before. Claims to be an EV fan, and he has long been known to have had his eyes on that role. Now, I'm going to start off with something controversial here, and I've spoken to a few people in the industry about this. All very pleased with Simeon's performance, but I get the feeling that this is very timely, and that we were getting to the point where, how we put this, Simeon's brutal efficiency in dealing with things was starting to get to a point where it was becoming problematic, and the time for nuance had arrived. I've had that from a couple of operators in Wellington, and wondered if you had a take on that, David.
Yeah, look, Simeon was really clear he wanted to do a number of things, and he's done that. He was getting a lot of criticism from road safety, I'm going to say acolytes, because I actually liked what Simeon did. And bearing in mind, I'm a road safety professional myself. But Chris Bishop, he was the shadow minister when I was at the Motor Industry Association, and I liked his approach. He was very approachable. He's a good thinker. He's not likely to do things in a hurry or rash things. That would be my expectation. He is also my local MP, so I've seen him operate in other ways as well. But I think he will be a better Minister of Transport because it's interested in the whole portfolio. Simeon was only, my take on it, my perception is that Simeon was interested in doing a number of things. I was going back to when the government was elected and came in, and the Prime Minister appointed Simeon Brown Minister of Transport. I was actually surprised that he got the role. I was surprised when he was made the Shadow Minister of Transport. But I think it's the way the Prime Minister's been sharing around the shadow portfolios and then the ministries. But I think Chris Bishop will settle things down. I think he will be a more traditional Minister of Transport. I think he will listen to things, and he's got the right portfolio mix with infrastructure and RMA. So you put those together, he's going to be looking at how do you make our roads work so that we use less fuel. I've been a big advocate over the years of saying, actually, we need roads of national significance. We need good roads, because one way of saving fuel is by driving consistently. You don't want to do stop-start, all that sort of stuff. That actually have safer outcomes as well. So I think he will take this more holistic systems view to roading. Simeon, who was, as you put it, ruthlessly efficient, was saying, actually, it's broke here, here, and here. I'm going to fix it. Wham, bam, bam, he did. Pretty much.
And possibly that was the role, exactly why he was appointed to that role, with an incoming new government that was handed, if you like, the keys to a new broom, was do the brutally efficient stuff up front, and then pass over the keys to the operator that can deal with the subtleties later on. But Simeon's job, I suspect, was just to do the hard and fast stuff hard, quickly, get it done, and then in possibly typical Simeon style, move on to the next project and then do the same thing. So I agree wholeheartedly with your analysis there, David. But I'd also point out that one of the challenges you're going to have, and I agree completely about the roading network, is somebody should knock on Auckland Transport's door and say, yeah, okay, that's a good idea about saving fuel with a better roading network. Every time you put in a speed hump, you are creating a higher emission profile for the vehicles that are using the roads and fuel usage.
Yeah.
Yeah, I think I'm of two minds around speed humps. I mean, this is a different subject, a little bit of a diversion, but speed humps have their place. It's usually for routes where there's a safety issue. I've seen them work really effectively where heavy vehicles were going down a side route that wasn't really suitable to heavy vehicles, and there was a school and a kindergarten and some other things there. So you put the speed humps in and the trucks say, oh yeah, okay, we're not going to do that. We're going to go somewhere else. Now, to me, that's a good use of speed humps. Mm-hmm. But speed humps just willy-nilly as a traffic calming mechanism or a speed control mechanism, I think needs to be carefully thought about.
Yes. And the whole speed hump thing, and, you know, the bike lanes, all that kind of stuff. People see them for their need, right? And if you are a cyclist or a pedestrian, or you've got kids and you live in an area that used to hold 10,000 people and now holds 50,000 people, then they're what you need. If you're someone who's driving through and isn't thinking about those things, then they're the worst thing in the world. So it's quite a difficult thing. I generally don't see speed humps being put in most places just for the sake of slowing you down. They're generally slowing you down because there's been a use change of that area. And also there's the side effects of, sure, you may not like that there's that bike lane there, but probably the reality is that you just simply can't get that many more cars in that. You've got to try and encourage at least a few people out of the cars and into something else.
Come out my way, Richard. I'll show you some speed humps.
It also
I've seen them out your way, Graham.
Yeah, it also goes back to the whole road cone issue, right? We need less road cones at roadworks. And I'm not disagreeing that we don't, but the argument goes that where's the balance, right? In that whether you think so or not, a lot of these things do save lives. And a politician, when they're deciding, or an agency when they're deciding where these things have to go or how much they have them, is you are deciding, where do I set the needle on acceptable levels of death and injury? And we forget, and the politicians very quickly forgot with the complaining about how many road cones there are out on highways, that we upped the level of road cones about, I think it was about 10 years ago, because we had a massive spate of road worker deaths. Now, has it gone too far? Absolutely. It's become an industry. But where do you push the line back to? Where's the acceptable death rate? And it's the same with some of that city infrastructure.
Yeah, I'm just going to comment on cycle lanes. They have their place, I think. Here's a really good example. I live in Eastbourne. It's a narrow road in and out. People love to cycle it. They've been building a cycle lane for the last 3 years. I think we've probably got another 18 months to 2 years before it gets completed at a fairly big price of $84 million, I think. But it serves also a purpose of roadproofing from the harbour in strong southerlies and northerlies. But the interesting thing is they've made it a decent width, and it will get most cyclists off, and we will see less traffic held up. In that situation, I think that's a good outcome. But it becomes more difficult in pure urban environments where you've got competing use and they take out car parks, put in a cycle lane. And we're seeing this in Wellington as well. And I know it's an issue in Auckland where then the people that suffer are actually the businesses, because people go into town to shop. They need a place to park. You take parking out. And then they say, oh, well, catch the bus in. But why would you catch a bus in and out if you're going to be carting around a whole lot of stuff that you're purchasing? So there becomes a real issue and a real problem around that. And I think
talk to anyone who lives in Melbourne or anywhere in the UK. It works there. I think sometimes people forget how dense some of these places are getting is the problem.
Yeah, well, I've been to Melbourne. I've been to Melbourne many times, and I've been to London many times. But they have slightly different circumstances, and there are surprisingly a lot of cars around in the city of London, although they've created a zone where it's a lot harder to get into now. And people have different cultures and different habits, but and I'm a regular bus user. I do use the bus, so I'm not anti-public transport at all. It's just you need to think about stuff. But if I'm going shopping, I don't want to have to cart my groceries back on a bus because I buy a lot of groceries. I shop periodically. What I don't want to do is go on a bus every second day to do grocery shopping, which is what a lot of people in Melbourne and London do.
Shop like an adult, David, and get home delivery.
That puts CO2 emissions.
Lettuce the way that you like to pick your own lettuce. Let's be honest. Never let them pick your own fruit and veg.
Yeah,
it's my mantra anyway. I think the three of us have just solved all the issues that an incoming Minister of Transport would care to. In fact, tell you what, Bish, don't worry about it. We've got this. Just talk to the AutoTalk Weekly Rep team. We've got this.
Well, he followed me on LinkedIn the day he became minister, so we'll see what happens from there. So this would have appeared in his LinkedIn feed today. Yeah,
you are a follower.
Yes. Anyway, right. Giltrap Group appoints Ben Montgomery as new Motorcorp GM. The Giltrap Group has appointed Ben Montgomery as the new general manager for Motorcorp Distributors Limited. The JLR importer effective February 17. Montgomery will lead a team of 40 staff employed by the business and responsible for 8 Jaguar Land Rover retailers across New Zealand. The appointment comes as outgoing MDL Chief Executive Steve Kitchington transitions to his new group chief executive role. Montgomery has been employed in leadership roles in the automotive industry for 21 years, including Volkswagen marketing, Jaguar Land Rover operations, and most recently, he was Volvo New Zealand general manager. Very nice guy, very capable executive, and great to see him getting a new role. Have you dealt with him before in one of his previous roles, David?
I have, and it's also, I think, really good to see the way the Giltrap Group have done these promotions as they've come up through their various commercial arms. So it signals to those that are employed in the wider group that there's a really good career path up through the company. I think that's good. I like to see loyalty rewarded when you have capable operators. He is, I think you're right, Richard. He's a nice guy. He will, when he speaks, he's got something to say. He doesn't like the sound of his own voice, so he doesn't speak unnecessarily. But he's been a very good operator in my experience.
You wouldn't get a job on this show then.
Inflation remains at 2.2%, vehicle costs down. The consumer price index was steady at 2.2% year on year in the December 2024 quarter, with annual vehicle spending down 3.9% according to Statistics New Zealand. The 2.2% annual increase follows a 2.2% annual increase in the September 2024 quarter. On a quarterly basis, second-hand cars were up 4.7%. In the December 2024 quarter based compared with the September 2024 quarter. Overall, it's the second consecutive quarter that the annual inflation rate has been within the Reserve Bank of New Zealand's target band of 1% to 3%. So before you jump in and go, well, of course spending's down, we're selling less cars. That's not how the CPI works. The CPI is the value of what's being sold. It's not the volume of what's being sold. But yeah, basically inflation is slowly getting under control. Where are we? Local Kia dealership wins international award. Pukekohe Kia, part of the Ebert group of dealerships, has been recognised as a global best dealer in the annual Kia Awards. It received the title of Platinum Prestige Dealer in recognition of its efforts, with Kia Global presenting the awards, assessing dealerships worldwide against a set of performance criteria. Only the top 5% received the Platinum Prestige Dealer Award, and given there are over 7,000 Kia dealerships worldwide, Pukekohe Kia is one of only 350 dealerships to meet the performance criteria. Some nice
That's pretty
awards
neat.
there. Well done.
That's pretty neat. That's actually quite an accolade when you think about it. And coming from my home, I'm a Franklin region boy, as I'm not surprised. Good customer service down in the Franklin area, but it's a good accolade rather than just being an internal New Zealand. You're the best out of the 5 dealers we have. Internationally recognised is not a bad thing indeed. Well done.
And a lot of flash new dealers out in Pukekohe the last couple of years.
Yes, there are. There's some money out there. Yes, there is.
Right. New MD announced for BMW Financial Services New Zealand. Andreas Lundgren has been announced as the new Managing Director for BMW Financial Services New Zealand Limited. BMW Group Australia Chief Executive Wolfram Bushell announced his appointment as he welcomed Steve Dunn to the BMW Motorrad Australia General Manager role, previously held by Lundgren. So there you go, new leadership there at that finance company, which, well, we all go, BMW, they lend on a lot of stuff, don't they, under their various brands?
Yeah, they do. Yes. Yep. In the used sector, they are an instrument for sure.
Yeah.
Mercedes-Benz does the same.
Not to the level of, what do they call it? Our BMW Alfera, is that their...
Oh, I see what you're saying, yeah.
The DeLorean DMC-12 is the most viewed in Trade Me's 2024 year. Trade Me has revealed the top 10 listings in 2024, which included a McLaren supercar, a former Prime Minister's limousine, and a trailered powerboat. A 1992 DeLorean DMC-12 listed in December 2024 amassed 97,676 views and counting, to become the first car in the top 10 for 2024. Trade Me Motors sales director Jamie Fuller says the listing is a chance to own a piece of automotive and cinematic history. Number 2 was a 2022 McLaren Elva. That's pretty cool. There was a 2022 Mercedes-Benz GT Black Series. Helen Clark's former Prime Minister Helen Clark's ministerial limousine was in 4th place, a 2005 BA Series Ford Limited V8. Listed on behalf of the New Zealand government, it attracted 46,525 views. Actually, I don't think it was listed on behalf of the government. I think it was listed by a dealership down in Christchurch. Or is that another one? Anyway, those cars always pop up. A White Pointer 840 prop sportsman diesel 350 horsepower trailer boat, listed by the courts, secured 5th place. There was either someone caught fishing.
There's a story behind that, surely.
Yeah. Someone caught the wrong size fish, someone was dealing something, or, yeah, let's not go too far into that. A 2019 Mazda 6 Takami weirdly came in at number 6.
Again, there's a story behind that too. There must be. Must be. I mean, all hail to the Mazda Takami package.
S63 Maybach S680 sedan, and then a few classics in the list. A 1980 Toyota Land Cruiser Chevy powered FJ45, a 1968 Holden Monaro, and a 1971 Holden Tirana GTR. So
I'm surprised my 2004 Toyota Corolla Runnix wasn't in that mix there. I fully expected to be in the top 10, but...
Well, I'll take a wild guess if you went and added together like the listings of each individual model type, the Toyota Aqua would probably be the most viewed by a mile.
Oh, probably yes. When it comes to views, absolutely. We'll look at the sales numbers reflect that. But
or the Ford Ranger, one of the two.
And the most stolen vehicle, of course, the Aqua.
But here's the thing: these are self-fulfilling prophecies too, because the way that your Trade Me market, your Trade Me viewing page works is Trade Me suggest viewings or items that are either you might be interested in or items that are popular. And the more popular the item is, it pops up on your news screen to say, "Hey, Graham, have a look at this while you're reviewing other listings." You have a look at that, and so on and so forth. And the more popular that gets, and it just generates the clicks. So
Yeah, every time
I
I
don't go out
see,
searching for 2018 Mazda 6 Takamis, so there's a reason why that has populated people's Trade Me page or page feed, and it may not be because they've searched for it, but it's been presented to them as a search.
every time I see somebody talking about a DeLorean, I roll my eyes and think, oh, probably one of the most god-awful cars ever produced on the
What a
planet.
shit. They were
Is there a
absolute
Is there a
shit.
suitcase of cocaine hidden in the boot? Anyway,
Uh,
Manukau Twitter Group appoints Nadine Bell as Chief Operating Officer. Experienced automotive industry senior leader Nadine Bell has been appointed as the Chief Operating Officer for Manukau Twitter Group. More than 30 years, Manukau Twitter Group has been family-owned and operated as the largest Twitter store operation in the New Zealand network. Bell was most recently the Chief Marketing Officer for Armstrong for almost 3 years, leading the marketing contact center and CRM teams. She spent more than 20 years at Honda New Zealand, holding management roles in CRM, dealer training, sales development, national sales and marketing, brand, customer experience, and after sales. She began her automotive career at Honda New Zealand in July 2000 as the national contact center manager. She left in 2020, having risen to general manager of after sales and customer. So again, a really good promotion. Promotion there. I believe Nadine is a very good operator, very well respected, and also, you know, interesting to see there. If you look at her roles, data and customer care are the kind of two key things there, which I think they're picking up on, and good to see her promoted there. Now, this one's a little bit of an interesting one. UBCO entering receivership. Tauranga-based electric motorcycle manufacturer UBCO has gone to receivership only a few months after celebrating a major deal with Australia Post. Grant Thornton, Stephen Dean and David Rusco appointed as receivers, so they have terminated all employees and ceased trading due to lack of available funding. According to the statement, they hope to sell the business and are inviting expressions of interest. Before receivership, UBCO's LinkedIn data suggests around 82 employees remained, down from 109 at the same time last year. In August 2024, the firm's chief executive, Olaf Hautaf, told media it had sold more than 6,000 bikes globally and was in the process of raising new capital. Around that ultimately did not materialize. Now, a former chief executive has popped up basically saying that where were the new products, and they had refused to sell to military.
well, there's more to it. There's more to it. That yes, the board did make a stand and say no defence, which I think was probably not clever. But the real issue here is the way in which they decided to become global. And a new board and a new chief executive decided that they would transfer some of the product development and everything to the American market and try and break into the American market. It's well known that became a source of contention within the company, and then the product that came back here often wasn't of as good quality as the New Zealand team would produce. And they just stretched themselves too far, too fast. Lack of real clear strategy about which markets they were going into, and I think this is a sad case of a company that started out really well, losing their line of sight on what actually they were there to do.
Yeah, they had a good first product, but the second product, the dirt bike they were promoting, has been sitting in development hell, I guess, now for what, 5 or 6 years. It's never gone to market. They were talking about an ATV, it never went to market. They talked about a side by side, never went to market.
They essentially developed.
That long.
They essentially had two head offices, and you can't operate a company like that.
Yeah. Ultimately, I think it's going to end up being owned by their Taiwanese manufacturer, who are already one of the major owners of it. And yeah, we'll see if anything comes out of life from that. But that company doesn't really exist anymore. And we referenced this earlier, so we'll just quickly run through the list.
Gents, just before you go any further, I have to say adieu. I'm sorry. I have to leave. I've got somebody here that I need to see that's arrived.
Look,
I'm
anyway,
so sorry.
We know it's the Aqua, so let's call it there anyway. A nice,
I've got to go. Sorry.
short one. that's it for today from the AutoTalk Weekly Wrap. We'll catch everyone next week.
Cheers all.